see you again.
Likewise. Too long, but I'll take your time whenever you give it to me.
Yes, I hope things have been gone well with you. I've just come down off of a very busy season, and now I'm like, okay, what's next?
Oh, that's awesome. I actually just had like some sinus issues going on. So I feel better. So I'm getting energized again. So I'm ramping back up. And it's becoming a busy season for me. So but I'm excited about it. So that's to be expected.
Yes.
Well, you look beautiful, by the
Thank
way.
you.
Let's acknowledge all this beauty on the screen.
Uh, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, we can jump in, Jasmine. So let's first start with, just the formal stuff, I guess you could say, and we can just go into your bio. Here's a summary of the bio, but I want to read it. What you submitted over. It is one of the most engaging bios that I've ever read. So I want to read it. So it states that Jasmine Ballard is a multidimensional design strategist, creative director, and cultural memory worker whose work lives at the intersection of beauty, Blackness, and belonging, rooted in the legacy of her Southern ancestors and inspired by global Black brilliance. Jasmine weaves strategy, storytelling, and sacred design into every space she touches. A former makeup artist turned creative visionary, Jasmine blends her background in product, branding, and cultural insight with a deep reverence for ancestral wisdom. She's the founder of Melanotion, a living archive and activation platform that promotes preservation of intergenerational Black stories. Jasmine doesn't fit in a lane. She builds frameworks, spaces, and experiences that help others remember who they are, whether she's curating sacred installations, developing strategic campaigns, leading community rituals, or facilitating youth storytelling. Her work is both personal and political, both soft and system shifting. She isn't just a creative, she is the altar and the offering.
Amen.
Amen. Like, amen. Like that. When I read the bio, I must admit I read it at least 3 times because I felt like it's kind of like that movie you go watch, but you feel like you missed something and something else could resonate. So that's how I felt when I was reading your bio. So thank you for taking the time to really connect with who you are and share that with us here at the Tilt Soil platform. We don't take it lightly. So let's talk about your self-awareness as a legacy and a practice, which is something that you mentioned. So you speak of being rooted in the legacy of your Southern ancestors. How has self-awareness shown up for you as an inheritance? I want you to try to unpack your ancestral memory and how does that crosshair with your inner knowledge of self-awareness?
That is a beautiful question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. So you're asking, how does my ancestral heritage show up within my self-awareness, or when did that start?
Absolutely. Yeah. What's your journey like with that?
Yeah, I can say, looking back, and I tell the story all the time about how my grandparents actually had this photo wall up in their homes. Now, growing up, being very young, all you're seeing are these black and white and sepia images, and all these mismatched frames, and you're a kid. So almost those stoic faces frighten you a bit, right? Especially if they're pictures from like the early 1900s and beyond. So I remember there were periods where I would actually run past, girls without having to look at them. Fast forward, though, I start to see that, I am directly connected to these people that are on the wall that I've never met before, that I've never seen. There's actually pictures of my great grandfather, Kate Pot, his brother, which they purchased land that my family still lives on today. And even before them, their father, Steely, and his father, Steely, who my family is still, gathering information on. So I really just come from a family of documentarians. Recently, I even got a photo album, right, of my grandparents kind of documenting my journey from 3 weeks to 3 months and beyond, them traveling across state lines. So I would say just a mixture of photographs of people who I had to piece together maybe what their stories were and how they impacted me today. to also just being around family members who were always documenting things. So I think what made me self-aware is just the fact that our memories are something that we need to capture. I think that was the first piece of my self-awareness, we can say, right? That my story is something that should be archived and told. And then looking to see that I come from a family of documentarians. Maybe they're not producing documentaries or movies, but they were living archives of capturing our day-to-day moments, things that we can archive for ourselves and keep forever. So I think that I've answered that a bit. If I didn't, we can dial back, but I think a lot of it is just coming from a family who saw the living archives and now becoming that.
No, you fully answered that. And thank you. Like, I think it's such a beautiful narrative that you're giving, your realization and the crosshairs with your self-awareness, because I think culturally we lose a lot of our history. I'm thinking about my own family, just gathering pictures of how deep generationally can I go back, so keeping that documentation to tell the story of your family history and beyond, I think it's very important. So that resonates.
Thank you. Something else I want to add to Tora, when I continue to think about that journey. So I went to a fine arts middle and high school in Augusta, Georgia. That's where I'm originally from. And actually my discipline by the time I left high school was photography. So again, do you see these maybe just different points in my life where I also became that documentarian, but wasn't necessarily considering myself that, or, at 16, 17, 18, not looking at myself as someone who documented moments. But I would say capturing moments has been a theme throughout my entire life that started in childhood.
That's beautiful. How did your sense of self shift when you transitioned from makeup artistry to design strategist? When you went from, being a makeup artist to a design strategist, what was your self shifting, like your inner workings? How did that shift? And then what truths about yourself became louder, as you shifted during that evolution?
Yeah, this is a great question again. So when I did makeup artistry, first of all, I found my love for makeup artistry really young, looking at my mom in the mirror, putting on her Mary Kay, how she applied that powder. I always was just so fascinated. One, she was already beautiful, but how it enhanced her, how her confidence shifted right in that mirror in front of me as I watched her. So I would say that was the first plant for makeup artistry. When I left college, I went to Valdosta State for about a year and left school and had to figure it out, right? I couldn't just be at home and do nothing. And that is where my trade of makeup artistry continued to grow. So again, something that I saw my mom do, and instinctually that was just in me to move into naturally. So I started to hustle. I was doing makeup. I think I also was working for my uncle at the car dealership, helping him with social media at the time, and also trying to just really figure things out as a young person who didn't necessarily decide to take a traditional route. And so makeup became really just my life and my bread and butter for a very long time. And even as I started to transition and grow in the workforce, I always kept that part-time makeup gig or was doing makeup or experimenting in some type of way. When I transitioned to Charlotte, and I came here just because of more opportunity, right? I saw more opportunity in the job market, especially for someone who didn't have a degree. And when I came here, I got more into kind of high-end makeup artistry, which I loved. And at that time, that's when my passion and skill set for social media and content management kind of merged. With my love for makeup. So I would say transitioning out of makeup, there was a lot of fear, right? Because for a long time, this was my stability and it's something that I loved, right? Just playing around, making people look glam, also just the skincare aspects of it as well, too, just beautification. Something that I grew to love. So making that transition into corporate, also without a degree, and moving more into that content management, design thinking, I think I had to question a lot about who I was. I think also then that was a time where I started to realize that a lot of my identity up until that point was built around the things that I were doing. Kind of map maybe my success to maybe what my career was or my job. So I remember just a moment when I wasn't even going to transition, into design thinking or content management. And my uncle My Uncle Keith Royal, who I moved to Charlotte with, said to me, "Why did you move here? You know, if it wasn't for you to take risks and jump out and try something new." So one, I owe that to him as well, but also really just assessing, who am I outside of the things that I'm doing.
How did you answer that call? Who am I?
I just jumped out there, honestly.
Yeah.
I remember thinking just my first day, I think my first contract was with Boy Scouts of America as their content manager. And I remember thinking, I've never camped a day in my life. I'm not equipped to do this at all. Yes, I know about social media. Yes, I know about content, but actually one of the best experiences I've had, and just another lesson for me to continue to jump, continue to leap, even if I don't see directly what may be in front of me.
I love that. Like, that gave me chills, literally, because, you know, I just wanted to drive home the reason for asking the question is, like, you don't have to always have it figured out. The journey is the learning experience. So I just wanted to drive that fact home. And a lot of people won't, unfortunately, experience that because fear paralyzes them. But I'm so happy that, you know, your journey got you here today, but your experience along the way too. That's a beautiful thing to experience. What ways do you use your creative process as a mirror to stay accountable to yourself? Where do you surprise yourself in the most in the work that you do?
Yeah, so using my creative process as a mirror. So for me, that's very loaded, especially with the work I would say that I'm doing more so now with Melanotion. So Melanotion's really just, it's more than a platform. It's a movement that I've created to safeguard our stories, our wisdom, our lived experiences in Black and Brown and really Indigenous Southeastern communities and all throughout the South and beyond. And how that work launched was me deciding to do a family documentary and actually just film my grandfather. When I sat with my grandfather, we did 2 filming sessions with him. On that second time that we filmed my grandfather, he passed away 6 days after we got that footage. And I remember just sitting on that, right? Because I feel like a lot of things that I've created or that I've done, whether it's makeup, whether it's content, whether it's things with Melanotion, all of it has been deeply personal for me. Like thinking back to even when I was doing makeup in that industry, there was a lot of scars that I had within myself. And I think the makeup was a way of covering those things up, right? So the work that I was doing naturally mapped to that. Even content, I would say, when I was blogging, running Black Girls Guide, I think that was even just a mask or a mirror of how I wanted to heal, right? So I used that platform as that mirror. And then now with Melanotion, I think it's not only the family wounds, but also I would say the family blessings, right? That I want to see amplified and archived. And that was the birthing of even this mission. So I think every piece of what I do when it comes to creativity is a mirror of just my soul, my heart, and also my love letter to the BIPOC community.
What is your thought process, like holistically, thoughts, feelings, physically, spiritually, when you began to share like your soul, these things that you're talking about with the public? Like, what is that like for you, Jasmine?
I can say a lot of times there's fear. There's fear, right? But I think I'm of the model that life is just the process. Life is us just moving through and forward. And I think fear is just a catalyst of that. So I think I've just reached a point in my life where fear isn't something that necessarily stops me now. I think if fear is present, that's a good thing because it pushes me to continue to drive forward.
I love that. So let's talk about softness and your strengths and yourself, just really briefly. So you describe your work as both soft and system shifting. How do you nurture your inner softness in a world that often asks Black women and women of color to be resilient before anything else?
Yeah, inner softness for me is really a sit back, and I could say with no media. So I am not opposed to taking social media breaks, getting offline where we're looking kind of at everybody else's life all day. I feel like stepping back from that gives me the opportunity to really hone in on me. And at that point, I'm able to just pour myself into my creative passions behind the scenes that maybe I don't share. Like, for instance, I love doing florals all around my home. That's something I've made an intentional practice. That I love to do. Painting, photography for the self is something that I just love to do as well. So I would say a lot of that is my self care. I'm also a huge music head. So a lot of time is music without words to just allow my mind to flow with whatever it may be filled with, right? While that beat becomes the melody that I'm grooving to, and not just in the physical, but in the spirit as well. So I'm really big on taking that intentional time. Something I've learned over time is rest.
Mm,
And I feel like that's something I'm still striving to get better at, right? Which is just taking a pause, because oftentimes I feel like Black women, we feel like we have to be on go. Or I kind of shared with you, I came from this kind of hustle nature because I felt like I had to. I had something to prove because I left school,
yeah.
right? Now it's you've accomplished so much. How do you sit in that? So you can welcome more accomplishment to come in as well, and not feel like I have to be on grind mode 24/7.
What's on repeat? You talked about your playlist and your music. What's on repeat right now?
Ooh, I think I'm really loving Destin Conrad. I mean, we're talking about new artists, Alex Isley.
Okay.
Um, Huge Chloe and Halle fan as well. That's the new stuff, but I also love the Stevie Wonders, the Erica Badu's,
Yes.
the classics.
Yeah. I love music too. Like it just is a way, I don't want to call it escape. It just kind of it helps me reconnect back to, that nostalgia. Like it just brings me in and just calms everything. So you mentioned music. I had to tap in and see what you were listening to. So a couple of those artists I haven't heard of. So I'm going to take note of that. So I can
Yeah.
see.
Also got to get Samara Joy. Got to get that jazz
Okay.
playlist too.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and see what that's about. So let's talk about your boundaries or your rituals that have helped you return to yourself. You know how the world tries to define us and put us in a box. Like, what are your rituals that help you get back to who you are to keep you on
Yeah,
track?
great question again. So I said again that social media time, off of the media, and this isn't just social, just decompressing from everything, world news, everything that's going on, and asking myself, where am I and how do I find that center? Um,
Hmm.
and I also think just spending quality times with friends and family is very important to me as well, and being intentional about who you're spending that time with. I know we heard that old saying, it's like the five most people that you hang around are who you become.
Hmm.
So really assessing just the circle of people that you have around you, because essentially they help to ground you. Not only do you have to find that self grounding, but also hanging around people that you can grow from and grow with as well. And yeah, again, just my florals. My name's Jazz, and I don't know if that was intentional with my parents. My dad has a beautiful yard full of flowers. My dad's family, they still plant and grow food. And so I think just that whole theme of being grounded has always been a part of me, grounded and blooming, and just sticking to that. When I stick to those things keep me rooted, grounded, and help me flex those boundaries.
I love the fact that you have history, family, just all of those things to return to. What about the girl that doesn't have those things to return to help her get grounded? What would you tell her?
Yeah, I would say first, discover self. And I feel like discovering self is a lifelong process. So I feel like in this social media age, right, I think self care, what we have now seen that as, is putting on a face mask or doing a scrub, going to the spa. But to me, coming back to the self is assessing how self aware am I about my feelings, my emotions, and my physical body, and also through my mental health. And for that girl who maybe doesn't have family or a story to necessarily go back to, that's familiar, start to write down your personal story, your personal thoughts. Something I found really interesting I want to share is one of my cousins, Malik. He's actually been writing letters to his children that he doesn't even have yet, by the way. He's like
I
27. And he has journals of his thoughts, his feelings, things that he wants for not only his future self, but his future lineage. And he's already documented that, which to me is so powerful, right? Because that is him shaping the new story forward, even beyond our family that we can come back to. So I would say to that girl, start to write down powerfully and intentionally your story, something that you can carry. You may have not come from that, but it's something that you can create.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Like I want to like for him to even have that thought process is amazing. Like that's really powerful. As a Black man, to do that and to shift that forward is amazing. I could
Yes.
even think about personally just changing the narrative, right? Just something as simple as saying I love you. Growing up, it just wasn't a thing that my mom did. It was just, I'm gonna get it done, take care of you. Her I love yous were more about making sure we were fed, clothed, and all of those things. It's the way that she expressed love. So I was very intentional about showing my children love, making sure they felt love, that they heard I love you, that it showed up, in ways that I didn't receive. And so as my children got older, what happened was is that I raised these children that were very loving,
Yeah.
very nurturing, very feely touchy, if you will. And so what began to arise out of me, I'm like, so I wasn't raised that way. So my daughter had to tell me, like, look, this is the way you raised me. Like, this is something you're going to have to deal with. Like, I'm a feely, touchy, lovey kid. This is the way you raised me because grandma didn't raise you that way. You have some things that you need to deal with. So my own traumas or, the way I navigated love began to show up. Even though I was intentional with them, I still hadn't fully dealt with what I had.
I get that 100% because I am your daughter. Like I am the one in my family who's touchy feely, loves to hold the hands, showing love to everybody from uncles to the youngest people in the family. I believe that we should openly be showing love to our family and uplifting them in that way. And I would say my parents were the same, not necessarily the touchy feely. They definitely said the I love yous for sure. But I think to them, I'm on another level. So
yeah. And it's just so interesting how we can push forward a narrative out of our own trauma because we don't want our children to deal with that, but we hadn't fully dealt with our own stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's easy to push something, but out of desire, lack, or what have you, but it's very important that you still dig deep within yourself. I just thought that was interesting. And that's what I thought about as you were sharing that with me. But yeah, so that's a talk my daughter and I had recently. So that's my mission now, to receive love and receive it openly and be okay with that.
something I want to share, when you just shared that, it made me think about what we just talked about with maybe like generational things that are happening within family units, right? And oftentimes, if you think about it, especially in Black communities, we're always talking about these generational curses. But even you just mentioned the generational blessing that now you've created in your family ecosystem, and how that's going to continue to go on. And I hope that we start to shift the narrative more around the generational blessings that are happening in our families, and how might we amplify that as we're breaking curses in the family or breaking chains across the family like you have done with your family unit.
Yeah, I love the way you say generational blessings because love is addictive. Sharing love is addictive. Even in times I don't want to be kissy, kissy, huggy, huggy. That's my baby, even though she's a big baby, but that's my baby. So I want her to feel love. So that's what shows up more. And then it's contagious. It goes down to nephews, great nephews. And, that shift has been amazing to see within my generation, coming from women, generational maternal women that were more about feeding, clothing, and this is good enough, but I love that shift for my family. And I love that you're a crusader, for highlighting those things. So I just thought I'd tell a little bit of my personal story. So let's talk about reflecting others to themselves. Basically, like, your platform and experiences help people to remember who they are. When did you first remember yourself in a way that changed everything for you, from one shift to the next?
Yeah, I think remembering myself is anytime I pick up a camera, to be honest with you. And I would say for my personal photography, I've even been doing a lot of like self-portraiture for myself, like behind the scenes as well. And I think that really lights me up just to be able to see the exact moment and remember what I was maybe feeling or experiencing in that time. And now it's captured. And even when I think back throughout my life, anytime that I've picked up the camera, I think has always been a moment of either finding self or coming back to self. I'll even share with you, Tora, like there's periods of times where sometimes I may not pick up my camera personally, and I feel that. My
Mm,
stepdad will even call sometimes like, have you picked up your camera? Like I can feel like the energy is,
mm,
it within you. So I would say for me, self-documenting, whether it's for the self, for my family, and even moments for others as well too, has been a moment of me coming back to self. As that pertains to maybe other people in my work, I would say with Melanotion, we're really big on just amplification of documenting your personal family stories, not only because we're in a legacy crisis. Right now, I think 30% of the population is about 55 and up. And this is just holistically, right? Not white,
mhm,
black, or any
mhm,
particular demographic. So we are not saving these stories,
mhm,
right? All these stories are going to the graveyard.
mhm,
And to me, these family stories that we learn, that we sit down and document, they are a relation of the self, right? It is our self identity that we're learning with every story that we're documenting from the people in our family. They continue to shape the narrative of who we are beyond maybe who we've been told that we are. So I would say that's how we do self-reflection work, pushing people just beyond the museums, right, where they're archiving
mhm,
history maybe on a broad scale. And then, people also are looking at their self-identity maybe through genealogy tools, right, where you can chase lineage. I would
mhm,
say my work really is focusing on those narratives that are in between. What are the lived experiences that our
mhm,
ancestors have had, and even self that were documented? What are the lessons? What are the voices that are shaping our identity across our generations, and then for us personally as well? So for me, it's just memory work and archival storytelling. Of course, we do immersive activations too. So when people are in person, they can have those moments of reflection, but really pushing people to not only do that personally, but collectively, and remembering that our histories need to intentionally be documented, honored, and preserved, especially in Black communities.
I see your passion in your eyes when you talk about, your passionate work, your purposeful work. I think I didn't really realize how we were losing legacy this way, until you highlighted. That's why I feel like your work is purposeful and needed. So thank you for educating me on that. It
Yeah.
took me to a place, my mom is 80, and it just took me to a place of preservation with her.
Yeah.
Well, what can I do? Like, your purpose is, it activates people to want to do things for preservation of legacy, generations, and things like that. So thank you, for doing that, as I sit here and ponder about what can I do to be a part of this movement. So I really appreciate that. How did you balance being a vessel for your community, healing while still protecting your own identity and voice?
Ooh, vessel for the community. I feel like that's loaded, right? I don't even know if I see myself.
Are, but you are. Look, I just shared, like, you just activated a flame in me. So you're a vessel, Jasmine. So how do you balance that as you reflect on that question?
I think the first thing is knowing that, and preaching as well, and embodying the fact that our legacy is not just something that we look back on, but it's about ensuring that our past remains present and that
Mhm.
is guiding us into the future, I would say is number one, right? I know a lot of times people say, well, we should get over the things in the past, but a part of me is how do we get rid of the past but still keep an identity of who we are? And so I think a lot of the work is just bridging the past to the present, but also paving a way for the future.
Mm.
And really pushing to our communities, asking the question, like, what type of ancestor will I be? So now
Mm.
it takes the onus off the past. It keeps the future in mind. But it also centers the self, right? To know that we are the living, breathing archives
Mm.
of yesterday and of the future.
Mm. That was so poetic. So poetic, but it resonates. It sounded so poetic. It resonated so poetically, and it's just easy enough to understand. Like, yeah, like, and I not only, I think we're so busy culturally trying to run away from the things that held us back, the things, from the past, patterns from the past, the historical things, the trauma that's connected to that. We're so busy trying to run away from those things, but we forget their lived experience that helped shape who we are, so we can carry those with us and be innovative to, like you say, pave the way for the future.
Exactly. And ask questions. Like, I'm a big believer in asking questions. You all have to check out my TED talk where a lot of the themes that I did in this talk, which was called Beyond the Checkbox, the Power of Cultural Confidence. And a lot of that talk was around self-identity. And for Black people, what does Black even mean?
Mm.
Our ancestors, I think about them in our school books, we saw them holding signs saying, we're fighting for our first class citizenship. Are these things that we eever received? What did
Mm.
that mean? So I think just
Mm.
asking questions around it all shapes our collective identity.
Mm.
So I love the line of question that you're asking here around like self-awareness and identity, because I think in my work is rooted around who am I personally, and then how does that aid to us collectively
Mhm.
as a community.
Absolutely. How let's go here. So, for girls and young women figuring themselves out, what questions did you wish that you asked yourself 15, 18, 21, just looking from today's perspective?
Ooh, I think a question that I could have asked is, am I doing this because I want to or from external validation?
Good question.
That is a big one, right? And probably the one hero question that I have from the question that you just asked, just am I doing these things because I love it? I have a desire to. I'm learning in some type of way, learning and getting closer to the self, or am I doing this because I feel like that's what the crowd is doing or what would appease to other people? And I
Hmm.
think maybe some years ago, that's definitely a question I wish I was aware enough to ask.
Mm. Jasmine, like, I can remember, like, even from this same question being proposed to myself, it's like, I think I started out on this journey. I don't think anything is coincidental what I'm doing. I feel like I made the choices I made, and there was some good. This is the good that came out of the decisions that I made.
Yeah.
So I had to ask myself, am I trying to save my younger self? Like, am I just doing
Mhm.
this from a savior type of perspective, or is this fully service? And that's something I still navigate, if I'm being totally transparent. And I think it's a bit of both. I really do, because that's the way I'm healing, and that's the way I'm journeying through my life. To serve, females, to help them, with the things that I didn't have, the education and knowledge that I didn't have. So in the process of serving others, I'm also saving myself. So that's just how I look at it. And that's why I feel like that question is so loaded. And you can ask yourself so many questions, the younger you. And I think it'll help guardrail the journey too, as you go out and do your purpose work. So,
Right. Well, I think it's so needed. The work that you're doing, Tora, is just with the self awareness and helping younger women and young adult women with that. Is I even think of it biblically, right? Like if your enemy knows more than you, they know more about who you are and your gifting and your talents, then it just puts you in a vulnerable state, right? But having the power of knowing exactly who you are,
mm,
and seeing yourself as God, as the Christ consciousness, and you see see yourself in that, you have that power, it's less likely that people will be able to actually take advantage of you in any way because you know self. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that the work that you're doing is so powerful because you're instilling that in women, the power of self, self-knowledge, self-accountability. And therefore, you're leading up a new generation of women who cannot be taken advantage of.
That's right. Like we cannot be push, shove, shaken, any of that. I had an interview last week, and one of the things, that she shared was, I asked her, I was like, well, when you're in spaces and you're kind of looking around like, how did I get here?
Mhm.
She constantly says, I belong here. I belong here. So you just basically choose what you tell yourself. And I feel like a lot of times, especially for this generation, young and young adult women, the imposter syndrome, like that creeps up a lot. And, it's just what you tell yourself until it's fully activated, right? It's just until you start to believe it, because other people believe what you believe about yourself or what you're projecting about yourself. It's you, so it is powerful. And it is a long road. And I love the journey of figuring it out for myself and for other young ladies. Like, it feeds me. And some days I don't know. And some days I know, I feel like I know everything, like I'm going to conquer it all. And other days I'm like, what am I doing? Oh
Yeah.
my God. And it's a part of the process, but I wouldn't trade it. I definitely wouldn't trade it at all. So here's a question, Jasmine. If your younger self could watch you work today, see you build, lead, and hold sacred space, which you already do, okay? What part of her would feel most seen? And what part of her would you still be kind of searching for?
The questions. Okay. Ask me one more time if you don't mind.
I do not mind. Your brain is a depth of knowledge, so I wanted to make sure I came prepared to pick your brain apart, if you will. So if your younger self could watch you work today, what you do at Melanotion, Black Girls Media Guide, and forgive me if I said that Instagram wrong, see you build, lead, and hold sacred space. So basically everything that you do, you build, everything that you're doing within today's space, what part of her would feel most seen, like the younger you? What resonated from then to now? And what part of her would still be searching for a space to fit in?
Yeah, I would say what part of her would be most proud or like, yes, you're doing that is the fact that like the creativity.
Mhm.
Of course, I am a millennial, so I grew up in that day and age where we were outside. Yes, street lights coming back in, but also through the digital age. I remember Yahoo chat rooms and MySpace and crafting. Also, I remember just always building out PowerPoints or magazine covers is something that I used to want to do a lot, staying up wee hours of the night, and to see how that has transformed. And in a way, I'm still doing these things. When I first launched Melanotion, I started with a print publication, right?
Mhm.
So that's an ode to that 10 to 12-year-old girl who was sitting up late at night on Microsoft PowerPoint, figuring it out, putting herself on the covers of magazines. So I feel like my younger self would be so proud of that, to see the evolution of my creativity and how I've actually still stuck with the things that gave me that imagination nation, that childlike wonder, and that has been a spark.
Mm.
My younger self, and maybe I think the question was, how would I continue to keep pushing or keep going, or where's the area of opportunity?
Well, more so like, your creativity, the evolution of your creativity, your younger self is still there with you today. What parts of your younger self do you still feel like you have more to explore to show up more for today?
Yeah, I would echo that still with the creativity, right? Continue
Okay.
to push myself, not box myself in based upon maybe what the world says, but really leaning into that inner voice, leaning into the intuition as it pertains to my creativity, and continuing to go free, be free, go
Mm.
off, right? And not necessarily cap myself. And I think growing up, that's something I definitely dealt with. Maybe measure myself against the standards of others, wanting to be a people pleaser, wanting everybody to be happy and okay, but then asking, am I happy?
Mhm.
Okay. So I think continuing to push myself in a way that honors the self, honors my creativity, and also honors my lineage that came before me as well, in order to make my own mark.
I like that. just being able to explore the depth of the things that you love is very important, and giving it room to breathe, if you will, so it can grow. How do you discern between the stories you've inherited from culture and the ones that are authentically yours? How has self-awareness helped you untangle those two things?
Yeah, I think self-awareness has helped me untangle that by knowing who I come from, right? Like my lineage, the women who have stood before me, and actually assessing and looking at their stories, right, of the trials and also tribulations, but the successes of things that they encounter. So oftentimes when I'm looking at our broader culture, kind of like I shared with you before, when it comes to our stories and our narratives, it's important for us to get that personally right, and then we see how that aids into our collective. So same thing here. Who did I come from? Who are the powerful women and men who stand in my bloodline before me? And how does that shape me for the better? And what are some things that I can actually shift for the next generations to come? So I think for me, it's going back into those family roots, looking really deep into the bloodline, and also a lot of prayer.
Yeah, gotta have a root and in prayer. For me, that's just it's one of my what they call today coping skills. I call it a line a line of life, a lifeline, because without it, who would I prefer to vent to? Where would I prefer to vent? And sitting quietly in meditation, or sitting quietly to receive direction, and honing in on into who I am spiritually, it just helps clear the way, like clear the air for me. And however you want to say it, some people say prayer, I say prayer. Culturally, I was raised to say have a believing of Jesus Christ, and things of that nature. But people's beliefs are different, and I respect them. So I will say that whatever centers you, I think
Mhm.
it's important to put into practice. But culturally, this is like our cultural thing. And with my family, I think it was more, when we talk about traditions, I think it was more of, if you do this, A, B, C, and D, then you can
Yep.
get E, F. And the shift is, it's not that,
Mhm.
but I think it's important that we keep a lot of traditions in line, because they help to shape and pave the way for who we are. But there's a shift that needs to take place, is that you don't have to give a certain thing to get a certain thing from a spiritual place. It's basically alignment with who you are.
I agree with that too. And I love how you just talked about how prayers just seem differently based upon the practices that you have throughout the culture too. And another thing I'll say is, I think shifting the way that we talk about our words. Our words are a living practice every day. Every time we speak, there's some type of confession or prayer or
Mm,
affirmation that is happening. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, as well as to how we speak to ourselves, our
mm,
self-talk, what we're confessing, and also being very mindful of the things we're singing,
mm.
speaking, and how we're interacting with others, all throughout the power of our words.
Absolutely, so eloquently put. And yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Tell me, what does belonging feel like inside of you, before it ever becomes something you offer up in your work into others?
Ooh, how does belonging sit inside of me? I think belonging is something that honestly I'm still searching for, right? I think the belonging piece is, I don't know, is that may be what I could call my journey, right? The journey of belonging, but more so belonging for myself. Um,
Mhm,
More than anything, I definitely feel like I'm an overcomer, thinking about just different things that I've dealt with throughout my life, from childhood all the way up to adulthood, from molestation, right, to bullying, to just so many different things that I feel like we all encounter as women. So I think the belonging is just me knowing that I am enough, and every day choosing that for myself, choosing me. And
mhm,
maybe sometimes I may fall short of that, or there's that negative self-talk, or maybe I go into these mental loops about,
mhm,
who I think I should be, but remembering I am. in all things is that sense of belonging. And I think I have to stand on that before I give anything back to the community. And it's an ever going process. It is not something that I've necessarily mastered, but it's something that I have in the past few years been way more intentional about, that the belonging is the I am. I am here. I am arrived. I have arrived. I am altered to the self. And that's altar. When you think about it, is going to the altar, maybe in your church and you're laying things down, but also the ability to just alter who you are within your life. And so even this year, I've said, this is the year of altered for me. I'm coming back to the self. And that's why my bio, I said, not only am I the altar, I'm also the offering as well.
Absolutely. What one of the questions based off, as I sit here and listen to you, one of the questions I used to ask myself, well, who do they think I am? So I would find myself showing up to perform, right?
Mhm.
So I would have this anxiety, this overstimulation around, just the tap dance and the sing, and just how I felt that people would see me. So I would, you know, get this anxiousness about rising to the occasion. As
Mm.
I learned and as I continue to learn, as I expound on my knowledge within my work and my service, is that I am resting more and more within who I am and showing up authentically and fully in that instead of who I think they expect me to be, right?
Exactly.
So the power of performance is then muted, or the sound is at least lower than what it used to be.
Mhm.
So belonging is just a creation of space that you make for yourself, and you're there because you're supposed to be there, wherever there may be. So those were the things I continue, to tell myself, because if I get paralyzed with fear, as we talked about before, I'll never show up in the spaces where I'm needed to do the work that I'm purposed to do. So, you're not alone in that process. I think it's an ongoing thing, for us to continue to stretch ourselves, to show up, and to be there for ourselves and for others. So,
Yeah.
not alone in that. So you talked about being the altar and the offering, such a great segue. You said that I am the altar and the offering. What does it require of your spirit to live at that intersection every single day?
Whew, what it takes is the word and theme that we've talked about a lot of self-awareness and a lot of intentionality. So for me to be that altar, that means that I am the foundation and all. Another verse that I like to talk about is when God said that we are made in the image of him, right?
Mhm,
So if we are made in the image of God, then I already have everything that I need in my foundation,
mhm,
the altar. But the offering is how maybe I live my life and what I'm contributing to
mhm,
the foundation that is already built. So knowing that my ground is already steady, even when I feel like it's shaken, it's still there. And how I continue to live my life through every word that I speak, through every thought, even the things that I may be fighting through, knowing that it's all aiding to the greater good of maybe what this altar or foundation is for self, and that I cannot be shaken. And so I think that's where that intersection lives, is knowing the foundation, but also life is still happening, right?
yeah,
So in life still living, how am I being intentional and still keeping my eye on the prize and knowing that I am already whole because I am made in the image of God. So there's nothing to fear. I am already.
I love it. I love it. How do you know when your inner compass is in alignment with your purpose and not just productivity?
Ooh, so that is something. This question, okay, I feel attacked. So I remember growing up, and even still now, my dad will tell me, like, Jasmine, you don't always have to be busy. You don't always have to be moving. So again, I think it's just some of that trauma or how I used to think of myself for maybe not graduating college. Right, I felt like I had to hustle and push
Mhm,
24/7 to feel productive. And I think that I went through this loop probably up until maybe about 4 years ago.
mhm,
Right, where now it's just, does it feel good to me? Do I feel seen from myself? Do I feel like my ancestors are giving me a pat on the back for this work that I'm pushing forth? Am I honoring them? So it's not so much about being productive or being busy. I think it's more so about honoring myself. And I see honoring myself in my work as true productivity.
I like that answer. That's awesome. Well, Jasmine, I think I'm done grilling you because I wanted to dig as deep in your brain as I could today. And it's been a beautiful journey, and I really appreciate your time. But I cannot let you leave before we do a little thing here, as I call it. We're asked that you close your eyes.
Okay.
And when you close your eyes, I want you to reflect on your younger self and just talk to her real briefly. What would you tell her? How do you see her? And whatever else you wish to share with us today.
Young Jazz, girl, you are amazing. You are a warrior. You have been through so many things. I would tell you that right now I am hugging you with all of the goodness, all the greatness, all the things that maybe you have needed. Girl, you have decided to give those things to yourself. As you grew throughout your life, and you are seen, you are loved, you are forgiven, you are honored, and all the things that you want to do, you're doing those and even more. So be open to surprises. Know that your memory is medicine. Continue to lean on those who are around you, who you may not be able to see in the future, like your great grandmother. Sit at her feet, ask her questions, and know that you are part of the living archive of your family and continuing out from generations to come. For generations to come, your name will be spoken, your impact will be felt.
I'm speechless. I'm sorry. How
Thank
do
you.
you feel, Jasmine, when you talk to her just now? How do you feel? You feel light?
I feel light. You know what? I feel like for so long in therapy, that was a big challenge for me, right? Being able to even talk and tap into my younger self. And I'm happy to just be at a place now where I can hug her and now shed those things, right? And use them as a catalyst to move forward for all the wow dreams that young Jazz had. And now I'm the embodiment and the vessel that are carrying those dreams out.
I love that you said that you're forgiven. That's
Mhm.
powerful. That's huge. Well, I won't keep you. I love being in your space. Personally, Tilled Soil, thanks you so much.
Thank
Um,
you.
if I could pour into you for a second, you are one of the most beautiful Black girls I have ever come across. I love your mind. I love the way that you think. I love that you've given an offering to us to take, and realize where we are within the work that you do. It puts me in a place of accountability. So thank you for that. And I want you to continue to know that you do belong and that you have a seat. You make your own table, Jasmine. Like, you're just that type of young woman. And if there's anything that I or the organization could ever do to support you, I want you to know that we're here, and however we can show up for you fully. If you offer that to us, we will do our best, if not go above and beyond, to be there. So thank you for your time today. I've put your social media up here. They would be missing out if they don't follow you and your beautiful stories. Like, just the way that you tell the archives and the stories are absolutely stunning. So thank you for that offering as well. So we really love you over here, and we just want to pour into you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And till soil, I love it. Even just even like how you say till soil, which is literally the soil of the ground where we plant, where we get all of our nourishment from. And you really are out here tilling in these streets. We are, and continue to do your great work. I'm a huge fan of the work that you're doing, the true impact that you're making in the community, with schools, with young girls. And thank you for even giving me the opportunity just to share a bit of who I am with your audience.
Absolutely. Well, Jasmine, we love you. We wish you the best. Again, if we could ever be of service to support, let us know. But we'll be following your journey and supporting your journey any way that we can.
Thank you. Bye,
You're
guys.
welcome. Have a great day. Bye, sweetheart.